Welcome to Faith Talks Wood podcast. I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast about everything from Jesus to joinery, and we enjoy talking about it all. Tom, I got 18 inches of snow in 24 hours here. You want to talk about that? But the silver lining is it's snowboarding snow. It's not wet. It's very fluffy, you know, the kind of snow you want to get up on the mountain kind of snow. But that much snow that fast is just crazy. And not only that, most of it came within like an 8-hour period. We went to bed. It was about midnight. My wife and I got to bed and it wasn't snowing. And we woke up to 12 inches of snow. Just been a lot of snow, but praise the Lord that I have a tractor with a bucket and I can move lots of snow. And so if I didn't have my tractor, I don't know what I would have done. Cause I mean, at that point you got that much snow. It's not like you just take a shovel, and our house that's off the road and we got a horseshoe driveway, and it just would have been insane. So I plowed it Saturday morning, and then by Saturday night, there's another 8 inches of snow or so on there. So 6 or 8 inches. So it's crazy, but yeah, so we're surviving here. Everything's good, warm. And how are things in Colorado?
It's good. Our snow that we got last week all melted off. It actually got up high 30s, low 40s the last couple of days. But after church, me and my daughter went up to the mountain today and did some snowboarding. It was snowing up there, but it was still like 28 degrees, which is absolutely perfect. This kind of day you dream of on the mountain. You almost get hot in your snow gear, but it was beautiful. Other than the fact that they were having a ski race thing up there, and so there was a ton of people. Parking wise, the lift we go on wasn't that bad, but it was a lot more than normal. But we had a good time this afternoon. So, but yep.
That's awesome. Well, man, we've got a very exciting episode, and I'm excited to jump right into it. But we've got a guest on the episode. I'm going to let you introduce the guest, and man, let's get into this.
Yeah, man. So our guest today, I actually just stumbled across maybe 6 weeks ago. There was a carving contest online, and I saw her project, and I was just blown away. And of course, immediately had to go to her page, and then on her page said Jesus follower. I was like, we have got to get this girl on the podcast. So not only are you our first female guest, but I think you're our first carver. I don't remember any.
All right.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's welcome Miss Lia Parker. Lia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
What's up, guys? Well, I can tell you this. You had 18 inches of snow. 2 of those inches found its way to Texas, and it shut life down for the past week. And so as of about 2 days ago, I was in my house for a week solid. We couldn't go anywhere. We have a truck with 4-wheel drive, but my husband had to take it. Anyways, I've been stir crazy. So talking to you guys, I haven't talked to many adults in the past week and a half. This is probably the most adult conversation I had besides church this morning. So I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited to have you on. So we know that you're living down there in Texas, and I did see your post this week about your frozen pipes and a bunch of splitting firewood. So
that was the only. I'm not going to get up in my shop whenever it gets close to anything close to under 40s, and so we had some pipes bust. My husband showed up with a superhero cape, and homeboy fixed it in front of my eyes. I've never seen anything more magical than him glue, PVC together and put it back up. But so the well house has my heater that's normally in my shop. And so with it being so cold, I just told my husband, I was like, the only woodwork that anybody's going to be seeing is me splitting wood and making kindling. And I was like, well, if that's life, then that's what Instagram's going to see. We'll keep it real on my channel. But yeah, I'm out here in Atlanta, Texas. I live right by 3 states, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. And this is where my husband's from. We moved here about 7 years ago, right after 2 weeks after I had my first kid, Lola. So we did the whole sell your house, get a new job, relocate, start a new church thing. Which you're familiar with, Will. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so we've been here for the past 7 years. We live on 11 acres out in East Texas. Woodworking preceded being here a few years whenever I was in teaching and doing some other things. But once we got here, these are our settle in years. That's what we're calling them. The place where you want to put your feet down deep in the soil and stick around for a while. And little did I know in my late 30s, I would also be starting a woodworking business and it turning into what I always hoped it would be, which is ministry more than making. And that's really something this next year.
Amen.
Yeah, this next year is funny because, and I'll walk through kind of how I got here a little bit later, but this next year is really where I start to be able to tell my story and to show why I do what I do instead of just showing how I do what I do. And you guys are kind of kicking it off. So yeah, this is a little bit of answer prayer for me and I appreciate it. Y'all didn't know what y'all were getting into, but yeah, so you're helping my story come along.
Awesome.
To do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, on the podcast, our main thing with having guests on is just to hear their testimony, both in faith and woodworking. And so, Leah, how'd you come to know Jesus?
I love this story because I get to throw my sister under the bus, but really not just to make fun of her. But I was at the tender age of 13. My grandma was taking us to church during a few of these earlier years. My parents were getting around to it, but at 13, I happened to be there, and the pastor gave a typical altar call. I don't remember what he said during the service. I just knew that the Jesus he was talking about, that's what I wanted. And it was one of those guttural, like, if you don't get up and run, then what are you doing, And so during those years, 13, you're having those questions of who am I, why am I, what am I? There's identity everywhere at that age. And I remember going to sleep days before that, just thinking, if this is it, then I'm not impressed. If this is all that life is, then it's not anything that I would idolize and want to continue with. And it wasn't so much of thinking of ending my life. It was just like, why do I live it? And it was in weeks after that I ran up to the front of the church as Brother Kevin was giving an altar call. And I'm up there and I'm laughing because I'm like, this is the answer. This is what I was going to sleep wondering about. And as I looked over to my left, my sister, who's a year and a half older than me and probably temperamental, the very opposite of me. And I'm laughing and she's just sobbing. I mean, the mascara is down to her neck. She was having the same experience, but it was fleshing out through brokenness and the things I also felt, but it was just so opposite. And so, of course, I'm her little sister. She looks at me and she's like, why are you following me? And I'm like, I'm not following you. I'm following Jesus. And so that's our whole story on how we came to know Jesus on the same day. And it's great because the joy that I had that day is a joy that if I go to sleep asking those same questions, it's the joy that God meets me with. And whether you're 13 or 37, which I don't mind admitting, the same questions come up and the same answers are always there and they're always the same. They never change. And I think that has been the reason why each point in my life has always brought myself back to you have this job. Well, how are you ministering in it? Well, you're a stay-at-home mom. Well, how are you ministering in it? And it's just always brought it back to sharing it, And so 13, I don't want to do the math out loud, 37 minus 13, but how many years is that, guys? Somebody do the math
24.
for me. Is that 24? I'm almost coming up on 25 years. 25 years of knowing them, and it's still brand new every day.
It really
That's awesome.
is.
So would you say that your 25 years of being where you're at, assuming it's growing, right? It's like it wasn't always, college years or as you got married, had kids. Like I know in my walk, and I'll be 33 this year, I think. I don't know.
By the time you're my age, your memory is going to be awful.
And I know that what I thought the faith that I had in high school is nothing compared to what God's revealing to me now as I've experienced life, right? Is that kind of
Mhm.
similar for where your walk to where you're
Oh
at now,
man,
Leah at 37?
Leah at 37. I had to say that I think the most uh, formative years are the ones where you're having to operate your faith and nobody applauds you. So, in college, there's still so many ministries that's for a college student. They're still feeding you so much of geared ministry towards you. And then you get into the workforce and you're paying your own taxes, you're buying your own toothpaste, and you're having to go to church just because you go to church. And those are the years where your faith's got to work now. Nobody's going to do it for you, to a certain extent. I don't think those were the hardest years of my faith, though. I think being a parent has been the hardest years. And if you've ever parented in any type of way, whether it was your biological kid or stepped into that role, um, every word that comes from your mouth, every failure, it all just like God just heaps it right back on you at the end of the day. So, why are you not sharing? Why are you being selfish with your things? And then I look at myself and I'm like, but where am I doing that? And the Lord is gracious, but the knife slices both ways, and God's word does. And so the past 7 years has absolutely been the hardest, but they're also the most refining, and we know that that's how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
know I have a mentor who challenged me at a young age. I say young, in my 20s, because you grow up in a church and you always follow what the pastor says, and that's what the pastor believes, kind of thing. And he really challenged me to, well, what do you believe, Will? Well,
Mm-hmm.
you should dig into scripture yourself and figure out what you believe about that. And so I know my 20s were refining, and then the parenting. Yeah, parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's the most blessing that I've ever experienced in my life. And to watch now my 3.5-year-old keep me accountable to pray before dinner and to pray before we go
Oh,
to bed. You know what
I
I
got
mean?
one of
Like,
those. Yeah.
right? Like, Daddy, we gotta pray. I'm like, you are right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, do you find with your kids that they're all different though? Like, or every person out, all different personalities?
Yeah, I was a teacher for 10 years. So after college, I went into teaching, and for 10 years, I got to look at other people's children and, bring them through the different things that I taught. I was a coach for years, and I didn't have kids though during those years. And so you're playing a weird role of a parent during that time to these kids that aren't yours. And then whenever I had mine, I remember thinking like who are you, and thinking that I was supposed to know that right off the bat, like right as you have your kid. And that's a great deception. You learn your kids as they grow, and you learn what God has given you as they grow. You learn what he's gifted them as they grow. And so it took me a bit to get my feet underneath me, with my first one. And then this beautiful human being started to shine through this cute little fat pudgy baby. And we learned that Lola is she's a little bit of my taskmaster. She wants to know what's to come. She is the leader of my three sweet little turkeys that I have. She loves to wrangle people up and go have a good time. She is just that good heart spirit. And then my son Solomon, when we were pregnant with him, he's one of 12 grandkids on Seth's side of the family. He's the only boy, so there's one boy and there's 11 other girl cousins that he's got. And they just boss that sweet boy around, and he just does what they ask, and he serves them. I thought I was about to get this, crazy rambunctious, kid that bounces off the walls. And every now and again he will. He is the most emotionally intelligent child that I've ever met. He can speak his feelings clearly and call you to the carpet if need be, but do it with such a piercing love. It's the most amazing thing. And then my youngest, Liv, Lord help me, she's a fireball, man. I should have known. She used to make these faces. I was like, where are these faces coming from? And I was like, maybe it's just a baby thing. Like maybe she'll grow out of it. And her face will emote whatever she is thinking in the moment. And most of the time it's a joke. Like she's about to say joke on you, or something. She's a real fun kid, but the three of them, they're like completely different planets that circle, me and Seth as their parents. And they reflect us in certain ways, and they surprise us in ways. But at the end of the day, I think what I love most about them, and what I love about all the things I put my hands to, there's endless amounts of learning them. So every day you get to wake up to a new challenge, and not in a bad way, but a wonderful thing to uncover with them. And that's very much so how I feel that woodwork complements parenting, whether it be mothers or fathers. We are learners. We're lifelong learners. That's what teachers are as well. So these things that I've put my hands to, I started seeing a theme about 2 years ago, like, oh, now I get it, Lord. Like, kids, it's just about learning you. I'm always learning you. Woodwork, I'm always trying something new out there. It's why I'm drawn to it so much. But yeah. Don't ever try and make one of your kids like the other one. They'll prove you wrong every time.
So you said that you were a coach. What sport did you coach?
I was thinking the same
Say it
thing.
one more time. My ears.
You said weird. You were a coach. What sport did you coach?
I was. Can y'all guess? I'd love to hear what you think first.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. The hard thing is, and don't think it's the wrong way, is I've never seen you in person, and usually you can tell, like, if you're 6 foot tall, of course you play basketball, right? But
no, dude, I can't make a layup. I'm not 6 foot tall, but I did coach basketball for a little bit.
Okay.
My guess is softball.
I played softball. I never coached that. That was the sport I played for the most of my life, and I never coached.
All right, I got it. It's lacrosse, isn't it?
I don't even know the rules of that game.
Oh.
No, I'll go in burst bubble. I was a junior high coach, and I loved doing. When you're in junior high, you coach everything. But so it was cross country, track, volleyball, basketball. But what I ended up gravitating the most to was track, cross country, and volleyball. I loved coaching it. Yeah. Basketball was a little bit too high risk, too high touch for me. And I ended up just, as a coach, just jumping up and down the whole game and being hoarse at halftime. But volleyball was probably my favorite. But
so I'm from Pennsylvania, and what a lot of people don't know about the area that I live, it is probably the most competitive men's high school volleyball in the country.
Really? Shocker.
Yeah, I grew up from second grade on playing volleyball.
What? Yeah. Can we talk about what position you played for a second? Let's just deviate.
I played a little libero. I'm tall, and so I'm 6'2", and so I was a strong side. So I played volleyball all through. I mean, my high school won states this year. We were runner-up state champions when I was in high school 20 years ago, 20 years ago. Volleyball. Now, the funny thing you'll find with this is I hate volleyball now. I want nothing to do with it. I played it like it's literally bred into like elementary school. It's like, all right, you're going to be a tall one. You're going to play volleyball. And that's how it was when I was growing up. And so I played so much of it. I just don't have any desire anymore to play volleyball.
So in your area, your volleyball is Texas's football.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, volleyball is big around here. Football is big, obviously. I mean, every high school has got the football rivalries, but the volleyball is a surprising one. Even in Tennessee, men's volleyball doesn't exist, like in the high school realm. And so, a couple different times I'd play pickup games and do some intramural stuff, and down in Tennessee, and it's all these guys are just, they don't know anything about volleyball because that's not what they do. And then I'll come in and they're like, holy crap. Now, again, I hadn't played in a long time, but it's bred into me, right? But basketball is probably my favorite. I actually was reffing basketball today. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Junior high's that was my jam. I like doing the junior high's foundational skills. So you're teaching them to love the game, to learn the game, but you're teaching them foundation to do whatever the coach in the high school program really wants from you. So I think that's probably why I enjoyed that age group the most, is because I'm setting them up for success later on without having to be successful in the moment. Successful is learning your drive, your technique and all that. And so that was probably what drew me to that level. And then whenever you get to, high school, unfortunately it's, you win. That's what you want, is to win. And that was such a turn off to me, because it was, man, if you were, a big fish in a small pond, then yeah, you won a lot, but what did you get out of it? And that's a tough lesson to teach a kid, So I liked where I was at. And once we were pregnant with Lola, we knew that I was probably going to stay home. That was a decision that we kind of came to as I finished teaching, and I called it my baby retirement, my teaching baby retirement. So I've been retired for 7 years now. Yeah, it's going well.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
We when we moved back home, we made a decision. My wife was going to stay home with the kids. And that was hard. My wife was a radiology manager, and, so she had a good income, and
Really?
so, yeah. So luckily it was
an X-ray.
Oh yeah. Yep. That's what my wife did for a long time. And it was just one of those things that we, I don't know, we just knew. And the funny part is my wife never wanted to be one up until we moved home.
Yeah.
And so we actually were just talking tonight about, we're going to homeschool, or we get a Christian private, or we're going to do public. And I think she's leaning towards homeschooling, which is surprising me. But if that's where she feels the Lord is leading her and our kids, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, watch out. You're getting signed up for that too, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to tell you
absolutely.
So my wife, when we had Kaylee, she stayed at home for the first 2.5 years, 3 years. And then there was church down a few blocks from where my business was that had a early morning program where the kids could come and basically interact with other kids. And it was like from 8 a.m. to 11. And so then at that age, my wife would drop her off there, come over, work for a few hours, then go back home with her. And then when she started school, we put her in public school, and she was in public school for kindergarten through fourth grade, and then started seeing stuff. My wife was getting at a point where she was tired of being at home, and I could tell. And so she had an opportunity to go and work at the garden center. And she said, well, who's going to take Kaylee to school? And I said, I'll just come back to working at home. I was like, yeah, not a big deal. I'm a sign maker. So I moved my business back to the house. And then after 1 year of that, I said, I do not like what I see going on in the school. And we decided to try homeschooling for fifth grade. And all because our favorite teacher actually encouraged us to. So in third grade, she had the most amazing teacher. And if every teacher was like that, like public school would be amazing. The problem with public school is not teachers, it's parents. And parents don't do their job, and then they expect teachers to be miracle workers and make their kids perfect. But we were contemplating the idea, and we were literally out at bookstores looking for curriculum, trying to figure out how am I going to do this. And we ran into her in the store, and we told her what we were thinking about and asked her opinion. She said, for Kaylee, 100% yes. And I asked her, what do you mean for Kaylee? She said, because your daughter will do the work, and I know that you will make her do the work. She said, the problem with homeschooling is too many people will take their kids, and they're like, because there's no deadlines, they're like, well, we're going to do this today. We'll push that off to tomorrow. She said 5 years later, the kids are 3 years behind. And I was like, oh. And I tell you what, my daughter got academic scholarships to college. Everybody told us, it's like, man, she's going to be behind. She's not going to be able to get in college. My daughter is starting her senior year tomorrow, and she's had a 4.0 5 of the 7 semesters she's been at college. She's had 2 Bs her entire college career. And,
good on her.
Yeah, but she has a work ethic. I mean, and we chose good programs to homeschool her, to give her a foundation. But it's kind of like you talked about the middle school coach. And I coach soccer for both middle school and high schoolers, and it's those early years where you're teaching them the foundational habits, whether it's teaching them how to dribble a soccer ball or whether it's teaching them how to get up in the morning, do their work, develop a habit, of whatever it is. But it carries on. And so
It does.
Our church about 15 years ago started a program called Upward. And so Upward is a Christian sports program. So we do Upward basketball, and that's where I was reffing today. So Upward season is in the winter, and we have 170 kids that go through Upward and play basketball at our church. And so what we found is kind of a sidebar. Obviously we give the gospel and there's devotion and stuff that happens at every halftime. But the competitiveness of the basketball in our area has gone through the roof because we're taking kids from kindergarten to sixth grade, and they come play basketball with us and learn the foundations and learn, those core skills. And it's been pretty cool to watch, actually, just seeing like not only the talent, but the integrity that's coming from it, because, we're faith-based and we're very serious about that. And our coaches and our refs, everybody who's part of this is vetted. Like, you don't just show up because you know basketball. I don't care. You know Jesus. You know Jesus. Okay, you can know basketball too. I can teach you basketball, right?
Right.
And so,
sure.
but yeah, that's cool. I love the coaching. Love the coaching stuff. I'm not coaching this year. I'm just doing reffing, but
That's sure ministry right there.
Oh yeah.
Well, what's the craziest thing? Christian league, of course, not all the kids are Christian, but man, the parents and the grandparents are atrocious sometimes. And so there's times where you're reffing a game, and especially when it gets to the older kids, and the parents will heckle you and like, you got a crappy call, and you'll take your whistle off and go to hand it to them and be like, you want to do this, right? And
man.
But you have to pray before you go in, pray before the game, and just hope that God gives you the wisdom and the peace to get through sometimes. But
extra peace.
I coached a Christian soccer team, so it was a homeschool league that was in North Carolina, and then we played all the other local private Christian schools. But my daughter played for a travel club team, and then we played on the Christian team. She by far preferred her homeschool team over her club team, even though the skill talent on the club team was by far. But we would go to tournaments, and I've literally seen parents get kicked out of the field. And so with my the team that I coached, I had a meeting with the kids, and I also had one with the parents. And and I laid out the lines. I was like, when we go to a game, you guys are representing Jesus just like these kids are on the field. And when we walk off, those parents are going to know that it's like, what's different? Why are they so nice? And so, because it really is, man, parents, I swear particularly if you go play in a public league, man, they're trying to live out their dreams through their kids.
It's really tough. To coach was crazy, because I taught, most of my teaching was at a private school in Tyler, Texas. And I had parents that I look back, and they definitely left a stain in some of the experience. I remember being disappointed, but thankfully I don't really remember what they did. The parents that left a mark on me that helped shape me as a mother, there was this one mom. I go back to this story in my mind all the time. I was coaching volleyball, and her girl was on the back row, and the other team had just a bead. They would serve and hit this kid every time. And she shanked a few balls, and whoever that server was doing good at hitting this girl every time that she served. And it was just breaking her down. And so we finally get through the play, and this girl comes up. She, rotates off back to the bench, and she's just crying. She's a mess. And I look over in the stands, and her mom is just there, and her mom's just shaking her head, like saying, like, you got this. Like, you go and talk to my kid, and because I wanted to give the parent a chance if they needed to. Anyway, so I go and sit by this girl. Oh, I remember her name, Lauren. and we talk it through. And I don't remember what I said. I just remember her taking a deep breath and getting her composure and then getting ready to get back out there in back row. And I said, the girl's going to serve it straight to you. Anyways, long story short, if this was a movie, you would have like that build up music going on. The ball's hit is going straight to the kid. And she has that perfect pass straight to the setter. I don't even know if we won the point, but the point of it was that parent trusted me. And afterwards, I talked to the parent, and the mom was in tears. And she was just like, that was a moment that I knew that God had you to give those words. And she said, as a mom, to trust you. And it was one of those that was like, I need to remember this, because this is going to be me as a parent, in the next few years. Me and Steph knew that we wanted to start a family. And that's why parenting is so hard, is because you spend 24 hours with this human being, and then God asks you to step back, and he asks you to trust that he's going to move and that he's got your kid way beyond, what you have. And so coaching gave me those little nuggets. Thankfully, I haven't had to do that yet. My kids aren't really in sports, and there's so much underneath my wing at this point still that I haven't had those iconic moments. But Lord help me, because they're coming. I hope I have as much grace as that parent did in that moment,
Oh yeah, man. I tell you what, coaching is so rewarding. And the other thing is, like, I learned God used coaching that team. I coached for 8 years, and so the parents. So most of the homeschool kids' parents were Christians, and they were raising their kids. So, now we had some that were not, but they would come to our team, and those kids would get changed by the other kids. But I had some parents on our team that did such an amazing job that their kids would minister to me. Like I grew in my faith from the kids, and these kids were just so amazing. And I loved every moment of it. It was just so amazing. But
I had when I was coaching basketball, I was coaching the little league, the little division, which is like kindergarten, first, second grade. And this is, I think, 8-9 years ago now. We had this kid. His name was Kenny. And Kenny was wild. Kenny couldn't, he had about the coordination of a sloth. And the whole season, Kenny never scored a point. And the last game of the season, I remember this because this is one of those things where kids teach you, right? Without us coaches even saying anything, all the kids from the other team and the kids from our team stood there in a circle around the hoop and let Kenny shoot, and they would give it back to him until he made it. And when he made it, there's like 300 people in the place, right? The place erupted. And what it showed me was like, man, these kids are showing us the meaning of what it is to love one another. And these moments where, like, it's all competition, it's competitive. These kids on their own accord, without us saying one thing, circled Kenny, man, and got him. And you'd have thought that kid just got free tickets to Disney World, right? I mean, he was so excited. Everybody rallied around him, and then we continued on the game. But man, kids teach you so much. And I wasn't a teacher, but just give you a background, Leah. From 2013 to 2018, I was a youth pastor. And so I've seen both the good and the bad side of parents, and the ones that allow for us as leaders to coach or teach or, pour into. And I've also had the ones where I had to rebuke in youth group, and then I got a call the next day. Why'd you yell at my kid? And I told him why. And I don't believe you, right? That kind of like, and it's like, okay, yeah, take a deep breath, right? Yeah. And so, man, that's awesome. Good stuff. So I was looking at your page earlier, and I saw this chair. There was a hand. I'm assuming that's what Tom is talking about. So first, let's back up, Leah. How did you get into the making and the carving and the woodworking? Like, what's the origin story of Parker Place? Tell us about it.
All right. It's great that we end at the hand chair, because it's so random, but I'll get you there. Okay. So, Seth and I got married, and woodworking started with, I feel like I'm an incessant person. When I get an idea, I got to bring it from start to finish, and if I don't, I'm just going to have it on like a loop in my head until I complete the loop. And so it started with Seth's dad was taking down an old church. He's a pastor here in Atlanta, and he's taking down an old church. And so we had some wood from this old church, and we didn't have a coffee table. I don't even think we had a couch. And I was like, well, we're going to make us a coffee table. Your dad's got that wood. Let's just go get it. And so we did, and we built it. And now it's on his parents' back porch to this day. So it started with necessity and need. And this is what we got. This is how we're going to do it. And, early married on, we had probably more money then than what we have now, but we felt like we were poor, if that makes any sense. And so we just kind of started building our stuff. From there, my dad retired from DuPont in Southeast Texas, 36 years worked there. And we were throwing him a porch party, and like, you're going to be retired and sit on the porch kind of party type deal. And so I made these decorations out of pallet wood. And that was my first even attempt to do anything like a mosaic. And from there, I just thought, you know what, I could probably just keep doing this. I liked it. Somebody said that they liked it. So I made a few more, sold them. So the humble beginnings was pallet art. That might be a stretch to call it art. It was, you could tell what shape it was, if that makes any sense. You can tell it was a fish or a whale out of pallets. And I made it in a makeshift carport at a rent house in Tyler, Texas. From there, it took a lot of weird twists and turns. If you're from Texas, you've probably heard of Canton, Texas, which is a huge citywide flea market. It's massive. The man who owned it at the time, who's since passed away, his daughter was kind of running some of the different sections of it, and she would lease out pieces of it to makers, and they would go for the first weekend in the month, and then you would sell. She got me a free spot because I taught her daughter. That's how the connection. So I taught her daughter, and she knew I was making this stuff, and so she got me a free spot at this huge market that happened once a weekend every month. From that point on, I started getting more serious about what I was making, started learning how to make different things, all out of pallets and softwood. And with the money that I made there during about a year and a half of woodworking, my husband had decided he wanted to go into rad tech, radiology school, to be an x-ray. Doing that paid for his entire 2 years of schooling through things that I made and sold at Canton. That is probably not a commentary on how great a woodworker I was. It's more of a commentary on, we got to get this paid for. We're going to hustle until we get it done, and we're not going to go into debt. And so we were able to do that. Once he was able to graduate, that was that big shift for our family where I was having my first baby. He graduated from that school. We moved here to Atlanta. And so once kids hit, the woodworking took a pause, but it had already started something that was going to snowball later on, that I knew it was a matter of time getting through, learning how to be a mom, getting through that early stage. I knew it was going to come back. I just didn't know at what capacity. At this point, I had a pretty good slew of beginner's tools. And then I can't wait to tell Lizzie that I'm going to talk about her. And then I saw the House of Timber and her beautiful scrolled just blessings of woodworking. And when I saw a scroll saw, I knew that's next. So I sold a road bike that I had that I wasn't going to get on anytime soon. And that paid for my first scroll saw from an older gentleman in a few neighboring towns who were still good friends. And he sold me one of his scroll saws, and we've kept a wonderful friendship between, a maker in his 80s who has helped mentor me as a maker myself. And from scroll saw, humble beginnings, that's where Parker Place really officially began in the era that I'm in now. So it was with scroll saw work. I made my own logo. I learned, where to invest in tools, what tools were going to get me where I wanted to go. But I think from that point, which was probably about 4 years ago till now, I didn't really know who I wanted to be as a business. I didn't know if I wanted to niche down. There was a lot of questions that took some years to answer. And then I also added 2 more kids to the mix. So there were really great periods where the Lord knew, probably for the way my brain worked, he knew to give me those rest periods where I couldn't be in the shop. I couldn't toil there. Instead, I had to peel back, and nurse these kids and think on it, have that time to just be put away to where I had to think and pray my way into who I wanted to be as a maker. And so with my youngest being 4, these past 3 years have been dedicated into who am I, what is Parker Place, and that kind of shifted into learning more skill sets, building more stuff. But in this past year of work, I've pushed into a lot more brand partnerships. I started making a lot more relationships that help, get me where I wanted to be, to learn the community that I was speaking to every day into my phone with Instagram. WorkbenchCon was a year ago. I happened to be able to go, and meeting some of the people there helped give the right words that I didn't have before, because I knew I wanted to do certain things. I just didn't know how to get there. And that helped me talk it out, basically. And so this past year, and where the hand chair comes in, I did some challenges this past summer with Makers Challenge Central. Have y'all heard of those guys? Yeah. Okay. So Makers Challenge Central, they had a coffee pour challenge, and it was with Walrus Oil. And it was to match their branding, which was Paul Bunyan. It was Paul Bunyan, like slacklining and like surfing. So it was like hipster Paul. And so whenever I made it look like it was like a bonfire, because Paul Bunyan's an outdoorsy brother,
I
Yeah.
saw that
So-
on your Instagram. That thing is so cool. Oh my God.
See, and I just wish I could bring people into, there's no magic that goes into making. There is a wild idea, a blissful moment of just blind ignorance that, hey, I bet you I can do this. And then there's just a lot of being dog-minded and just stubborn and making it happen. And that is the best way I can even describe on how that came from, my idea to finishing it up. And I think winning that one, it was affirmation that there's nothing crazy than saying yes to an idea. That's not a crazy way to be a maker. And for so long, I played it so safe, trying to make the things that somebody wanted to buy at a market, or doing this custom just the way this person wanted it. And I forgot. I just flat out forgot. I've got ideas of my own. And those challenges, they really single-handedly dismantled this block I'd put up at building for others, and coming back to the idea of Parker Place is me. I need to not just build for me like a selfish thing, but don't discount the ideas that God has given me, or a vision that came from my brain or whatever, and to trust in it. And so a few challenges later, after that coffee one, I got on the build team, where they will send you some of the products that the sponsors for whatever the challenge is. And so you build to whatever the theme is, and you show the sponsors, which is great, because this is a way that I've built up my clamp selection, my some of the consumables I've got. I was able to make really great contacts with the brands, but I was also able to kind of get my shop where it needed to be with the stuff that I needed to build. But it all culminated with me hanging out with Sabretooth in December for their build challenge. At this time, me and Tiffany, who runs Sabretooth Socials, we had a great relationship, great friendship. The girls on the build team, it was kind of like a big slumber party for us, that we met together for the whole month of December and talked about, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to build? And like, we would text each other daily. So that one build challenge came with 4 great friends of mine now. But I told Tiff, I said, I want to do something that's going to stir something up for y'all. Like, I want it for people to see Sabretooth with whatever the build is. And so I pitched her my idea, And she was like, Leah, you're wild. You know, I will be here to cheer you on the whole time. And so Tiff was this fantastic cheerleader that affirmed the same thing that I feel like each challenge had kind of gotten me to, like, go for it. You're not going to hurt anybody just by going for it. And so for December, I went for it. And when I glued up that first finger, and it weighed more than my very large white lab that I've got laying out there in the living room, I thought, what have I done? Like, like this sucker, I looked at Seth, I said, what did I think 4 sheets of plywood was going to weigh? Like, that's not light, you know? And the backstory, what I don't think I shared enough, I didn't think to share it. I have never carved anything that big. The first thing I'd ever carved was maybe a floral sign here and there, like, you know, a flower petal. I had never carved anything with power tools that I used for, you know, that challenge. So I did this as a novice. Like, I don't have the credentials to back up me taking on that build, but it just was that final 2023. Here's who I am. Let's push into 24 and remind people who Parker Place is. It's me, you know, it's my family. It's every influence I have that's sleeping upstairs. It's a little bit of fun, a little bit of music, solutions that are practical for your house. It's building a stinking huge hand chair that my whole family happens to fit in, by the way, that we all 5 fit in it.
That's crazy. That,
yeah.
I followed Tiff as well. And that girl is just like that donut she made.
Yeah.
It's like made you want to go eat a donut. I was like, it is so realistic, but
it is. Yeah.
But
it's funny that Leah says, you know, if you were here and saw how simple some of the stuff was. We had Everett Burge on the podcast. He's a smaller channel on Instagram, Wave After Wave Artworks, and the dude does stuff that blows my mind. And Tom would say the same thing. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's and I'm like, like, how do you?"
But you know, I think that is the amazing thing. And when I coached soccer, every kid wanted to be a forward and score. That's what every single kid wants to be, the kid that scores. But I would sit down with each one of them and try to explain that God created each one of us individually. And I'd ask them before we began the season, you know, what is it that you want to do when you grow up? And we'd go around and learn, you know, one person's say a doctor, another one's going to be a teacher, another one's going to be this and that. Not a single one of them would say they wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, then we would use that, of course, to say, okay, it's more than just about playing soccer. Then if we're all here, what are we here for if you're not wanting to become a professional soccer player? It's for relationships. We're here to explore other people, learn from other people, and God made each one of us individual. Some of you have an amazing foot and eye for putting the ball in the net. Some of you have an amazing skill for stopping somebody else from doing that. Somebody else is willing to dive and be crazy and be the goalie. And from an artistic standpoint, that's why I get amazed. And that is the one thing I love about Instagram is following different types of artists and makers. Like, no offense to the guys that are master cabinet builders. I know how to build a cabinet. And when you've seen one cabinet, you've seen them all. I hate to say that, but I mean, some of them might be a little better than other, but to see all the different types of creativity and what is able to come out of an individual's mind just amazes me. And like, I would never have fathomed. And you know, the chair in itself is amazing. When I saw it, I was like, good Lord, how much does that thing weigh? But what amazed me most was the detail in the knuckles on the back.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
You just say that, and the fingernails are all different, and it's like that they bit on this finger a little bit, you know.
Yeah, there's chips in it, and my niece came over the other day, and she hadn't seen it yet, and she went and looked at it, and her first thing was she got behind the fingernail, and she goes, "Ugh, what's behind this fingernail?" I was like, "You don't want to know." But the great part about the hand chair was there's so much. At the first idea of it, I knew that I wanted to do something pop culture that was outside of entertainment. I don't really get down with that. It's not something that I'd put in my house. And so I looked straight to, and the story I told is back whenever I was a kid, I got to redo my room, and I did it like 70s and 60s decor. And I guess during that time, I'd seen a hand chair, and they made the plastic ones back then that you could sit in that are all squishy. I was one. My mom was like, I don't really know if we're going to buy that for you. And it just never happened. And so that memory popped up. And then that's how the build, that was my first inkling on the idea. And then I ran with it. But what I haven't shared, and this will probably be my first YouTube video, is covering this chair. The story that happened, I wasn't expecting happen during the middle of it. I just cut a reel that I had glued up all the fingers, and I was, trimming each finger to the height that it was supposed to be. And I made a reel and I made a joke. I said, it feels kind of weird to cut off fingers, in my shop. Little did I know, later on that day, I would get a call from my husband. Oh, it gives me chills. I'm hoping I can talk about it without crying. My father-in-law had a table saw accident. And I'll tell his story tenderly because it's his story to tell. And the only reason I feel like that this is a good venue to do it first is because the ministry that man had in the hospital with, fingers that were barely hanging on, he used every bit and has continued to use every bit of that injury to make so much of God and to testify so much to the Lord. And so that day, as I made that very horribly timed joke, that was the morning that I posted that day, I was carving the first knuckle is what it was. And Seth calls me, and I run up to the hospital. I am covered in sawdust. I have my mask on. Okay. And if you've ever carved, you know that it's the most filthy experience. I show up to the hospital and I look at Seth and I said, I look like I pushed him into the table saw. I said, I've got sawdust all over me. And I didn't think of what they probably would have, seeing the daughter-in-law covered in table saw and then the father-in-law, who just cut off his fingers. I was like, they're going to think that I did it to him, but thankfully they had a little bit more grace in that. But so after that happened, they were able to reattach fingers. But I think the biggest part of it was that made me to go back and to have to revisit that build after that type of accident happens to one of the men that you love most in your life. It put that build on a different level for me. And if you're ever carving something that big, I spent a lot of hours on every one of those details. And I spent a lot of hours in prayer over, God, why is this coinciding? Why is this build happening at this time? Like I thought about it a lot. And I think what I would like to bring to the platform and where the Lord has brought my heart on what 2024 is going to look like for Parker Place is, he says, Leah, you have a story to tell. And it's not necessarily your father-in-law's of his table saw accident, but it's that, like, when I made your hands, like in James, he talks about suffering. We know that we will have suffering in our life. That is the number one thing you probably sign up for the moment you give God your heart, is that you know that there is going to be suffering there. The hands that I created that look like mine will make so much, but they will also bear so much. And as I was making this stinking hand chair, all I could think of was, God, thank you for the suffering. And it taught me to be thankful for these places. And Gene, my father-in-law, taught me to be thankful for the hurt that we have, because it makes so much of the God who created us. And it's still it's a little bit too new of a story to tell well without, stumbling over it. My father-in-law right now has 2 pins that he gets taken out next Monday out of his middle finger and his ring finger. But even in the pulpit today, talking about the sanctity of life and having his hand bandaged and knowing that life is so, so, so precious. Isn't it worth, suffering for the Lord to make great of them, to show somebody that their life is also worth it because of God that made them. So that's what the hand share ended up being. I haven't shared it on Instagram. I haven't shared that part of it, yet. And so giving it to you guys, y'all are kind of my trial run. But if anybody out there is listening, I think the one thing that I hope that they see is that I'm not the best maker to do what I did to even carve that. But God spoke so much during that build that no matter if I sell it, no matter if I monetize it off of it, no matter if it goes viral, nothing matters. It's where he met me during that build that will make that iconic for the rest of my life. Like, I'll never forget that, because how he helped me be able to walk out my father-in-law's accident by making it. Yeah.
There is no doubt in my mind that hand is, yeah. There are so many YouTubers or Instagramists or, that have a photo of what they would call their iconic piece. Like one guy that I follow, what's his, the Roaring Woodwork. Yeah, I don't know if you guys, he's on YouTube. He builds mid-century modern furniture, really, really beautiful stuff. And one end table launched his entire YouTube, his entire woodworking he made. It's an absolutely beautiful piece. And now he sells them, over and over. But I could see that hand being that I could say YouTube stardom or Instagram stardom or whatever, but it's just, there's nothing else out there that I've ever seen like it. It's so unique. Just really cool.
One of the things we've talked about on the podcast a bit, sometimes you have to go through tragedy to see God's majesty. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I actually gave devotion at the halftime at the basketball games today. And what I talked about is something we've talked about on the podcast, is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And so this whole idea that you're going to go through hard times. There's going to be trials. There's going to be hardships. It's inevitable. And God's not going to stop those, but he's going to pull you through them, right? Mm-hmm. In the midst of those things that seem the hardest, he's going to pull you through them. And the way in which God spoke to you in the middle of carving fingers, and to have the correlation between that and what happened to your father-in-law, and I mean, it's just how God works. I mean, that's so God, right?
It is, and I had to do some explaining to some of the church members who saw that reel. I had to tell them, look, that timing was not like I had put that reel out there beforehand, but ultimately it's, moving into the YouTube space. I had actually wanted to do that before any of this happened. I didn't know in what capacity, and I didn't really have a why yet, because I knew that was the next kind of place to go with content. I didn't have the meaningful of why I wanted to. And in the middle of that month of December, I realized that what I was missing was telling my story, because anything that I make comes with something. And if you've ever met me at a maker's market or something, that's my favorite part. Is why I do it, is to tell people. And then whenever the story unfolded the way it did in December with my father-in-law and with the hand share and all that kind of stuff, the Lord just like teed up this wonderful place to bring ministry, making, and me all into one venue, all furthering the place where I felt like I needed to go. I didn't know how. And I might do it. It might be a flop, but I think what I love most about it is he gave me my answer, And so with that being said, now it's just time to go do the work. And if you're a maker, there's those moments where you have this idea, but it doesn't happen until you step in there and you do the work. And I tell my kids, I have a saying, fill your hands with the right work. And if you don't know what that is, get your head in the Bible and you'll find out real fast, because that's where truth and that's where direction comes. And so I'm glad that I waited to be able to, position myself to be able to do YouTube. But I'm just so thankful he met me where I needed to be, and that this gets to be my first story to tell. I've always thought that making was the best. I mean, I was in Genesis today. That's where the sermon was at, talking about that we are formed in God's image. So there was always that with the hand that was kind of propelling it. But then whenever it moved into the suffering that my father-in-law had, and the suffering that Jesus did for us, and his hands were made in the image of his maker. And it was one of those that I was like, this is too, almost too easy, but we're going to go for it, you know? Yeah.
That's awesome.
You know, the thing about the going for it, right? God didn't part the Red Sea until when? Or the Jordan, until they stepped in.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't like, here, I'm going to open this up, you'll see it as you're coming. No, the priest had to step in and basically show God, like, okay, we're in it. Like, here we go. Yeah. And that's something I think that people forget. You know, they expect this coin machine kind of God, right? This, like, you know, you're going to give me everything I want. Well, the reality is God's going to bless you, but you have to take the step, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but in talking about taking the steps, and you're talking about like the story is like now you feel like God's giving you the place to tell it. I've been studying Samuel, 1 Samuel, in chapter 15. There's a verse that says, and this is not word for word, but basically it says, what's better, sacrifice and offering or obedience to God's voice? And it says, listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than suffering. It's not word for word, but that's pretty close. And when God tells us to do something, that's what we're supposed to do. Like, not, and so where that whole verse came in, Saul, you know, of course, was king. And the reason God took him down from the throne and put David in place is because when they went in and attacked, I forget the name of the town that they attacked, but God told him, go and destroy everything. I'm with you. I'm giving you victory. Go and destroy everything. And Saul spared the king, and then he kept the best of the treasures. And so it's like, hey, listen to me. Whatever I tell you to do is going to be victorious. And so anyway, sorry to get off on that tangent, but yeah, when God has given you a platform and told you what to do, he is going to bless it. So go for it.
Yeah.
Yep. So tell, you know, also on your platform, that on your Instagram, you've been making these little sander balls. So tell me how that came about. And I know you're going to be selling them or doing something with them, but I was like, that's pretty creative. So,
man, I'm a hustler, only because I can't stand sanding, and I make these little coffee scoops out of walnut, and which got its own story. Well, I was making a bunch of them, and if you've ever sanded anything that's a sphere that's that small, it's just a drag. And so one day I'm in the shop and I got 20 of them on the bench, and I'm like, I'm not about to do this by hand, and I don't have any option for a lathe. At that point, I didn't even have a drill press, which I'm not even sure if I would have gone that direction. Long story short, I'm like, Bear Woods had sent me some beads. I think they're officially called beads because there is a hole that goes through the entire thing. I get the names mixed up, but I had some that were about the right size, and I had some Velcro laying around. And I thought, well, why don't I just try and like make some type of sander that can get in there? And so I went through a few different variations of it. And by the time I got to the one that I've settled on now, like the stinker worked so good and it was so satisfying. And so, of course, what I do, I share it on Instagram, you know, this evolution of how I've figured out this one problem. And what hits with people, I think this is my favorite thing of Instagram. It's like they're shouting into this huge room of people. And whenever you shout the thing that perks up the most ears, I never can tell what it's going to be. But when you get all these people with a like mind and with the passion behind it, which I'm not sure that there are many people who are just very, you know, just they love the art of sanding. We all kind of want to get there as fast as possible, right? So there was a lot of people who were like, hey, like, I want one of those. Are you selling it? And so from that moment, it was probably a year ago at this point. At that moment, I was like, well, what if I try and patent it and just try and get it out to somebody who can take the idea and go with it? But that to know that life, like I felt like I would have to go back to college to know how to patent something. It's just hairy. And so I decided I didn't really want to go that route. So what happened was I put it on the back burner. And then my buddy Bradley over at Quartersawn Woodworks, have y'all seen his?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Bradley's like, hey, I'm doing something like it. And so we've been talking for months now. Well, he just finally rolled out his, which can chuck into a drill press. It's a little bit different, a little bit bigger. And so he got after me about a month ago and he's like, Leah, come on, you need to get yours done so you can, release yours and I'll release mine. And then maybe, we can get these out at the same time to where it'll give us both enough buzz. And he was so sweet. He sent me a file that I can hook up to my laser. I've got a small F1 X tool laser. And so I'm going to try and get all the little sanding pads and get those all lasered out this week so that I can send out to people. But it's really nothing special. It's just some Velcro I slapped on a ball. I chuck it into my drill and I get after it. You can, attach sandpaper to the top of it. Like I guess like the same way I look at the hand chair. I hate to say it's not special. Anybody can do it if you're stubborn enough and if you don't like sanding enough. Any of you guys can make it. And so I decided to not patent it. I'll sell them to folks if they don't want to have to order all the parts themselves. But I would freely tell anybody how to do it. I've done. It's I just really hate sanding.
Very cool. But
That's awesome.
sometimes like problems are what help us. I mean, like every jig that I make, it's because I have a problem and I need to figure out how to solve it. It's like, okay, how am I going to hold this in place while I drill this hole or make this cut or whatever? And I think that's where every jig comes from. And it's like, I got to solve a problem so that I can accomplish a task. So, but, well, cool.
Yeah.
So we'd like to kind of end the show talking about what we got. So I'm dying to know what's coming after the hand. Like what are your plans going forward in the future? What do you got on the table?
That's great. I had a plan starting January 1st, and then that plan, I really leave all January for that plan to just change. Because whenever life settles down after the holidays, you kind of see more clearly once that dust settles halfway through January. But for myself, I had a big change and shift in focus. Bear Woods has just hired me on to do their social Instagram posting and Facebook posting. So Bear Woods Supply, if you're not familiar with it, which is why I liked your post the other day. I was like, man, he's teeing me up to share some good stuff. I now run their socials, which gives me a really great in with the community. That's basically what it is just tying into the community and making sure people know what we offer. And then just calling out really great work that has some of the tools that Bearwood sells. So it ended up being a good fit for me at this moment. I'm glad it didn't come any sooner because it's going to be a blast to be able to do for the next few months. But as far as the shop, so Monday I start with Bearwoods. And then as far as the shop, I've got to put a buff finish on that hand. I've been putting it off until I had the heater back in there. So I'm going to get that guy shiny and then assembled, and then I'll deliver it not this next week, but the week after to a local place that's going to hold it for me.
So let me, okay, you're delivering it. So I know you said you were going to Workbench Con. Are you bringing the hand to Workbench Con?
If there's any way, if there was any possible logistical way, and if you're listening and you want to make this happen for me, I would totally bring it, because that would be probably the best thing that I could share with local makers that I, value and idolize. But I'm flying, I'm not driving. So I don't know if I could load up a 400-pound, hand chair on freight to get there.
We're going to have a conversation about it. So I have been debating, I have not bought my plane ticket yet. I have been debating on whether because originally the plane tickets were so high, I was going to drive because I have a truck and I also have a Prius, which I hate the Prius, but it's cheap on gas. And then
Right.
I'm from South Carolina and my mom lives 3 hours from Atlanta. And so my plans were to just go on down and spend a week or so with her and maybe help her do some stuff around the house. But then the reason I have not bought my plane ticket yet is because I kind of want to drive and make an adventure out of it. Go one route, go in there and meet like some other makers along the way. Like stop, hang out at somebody's shop. It'd be awesome if like there were some other makers along the path that I could stop and crash at their home, hang out in their shop, spend some time, just make an adventure out of it. But let me see if there's a path that I could come through and pick up the hand, because I would be the coolest guy at Workbench Con if I showed up with that hand in my truck.
That would be amazing. I'm going to go ahead and start taking Advil now to prepare for us to load that into your truck. Every time I touch it, I told my husband I aged 10 years every time I touch that thing and have to move it.
Oh, I can't imagine. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so now with Workbench Con, you're going to be working with bare woods, or you'll be doing like teaching scroll saw. I know Lizzie is teaching some scroll saw. I saw it on the list. What are you going to be doing there?
So I was also with Bare Woods last year. And so my big thing is our big thing is we want everybody to be able to come in and experience the scroll saw, the pyro, and shaping on the Marathon Rotary. The moment that you get hands-on with these tools, you'll know what the fuss is about, and we don't have to talk as much, And so Lizzie is going to be guiding the scroll saw. She's an amazing, on top of being a phenomenal maker. If you've heard Lizzie teach, 10-year teacher here, she knows how to be able to give that skill that she's worked on for how many years now, and to just give it to you. Like, she can teach that particular instrument better than I've heard anyone. So if you're out there and you're looking at going to Workbench Con and you want to be taught by the best, I'm telling you, she's the best. So she's going to be working on that. We'll have another maker, Ashley from Ash, Wood, and Hawk. She's going to be there in the booth. I'm going to be there in the booth. And so we will give you guided templates and projects to complete on any or all of those machines. And we'll be hosting demos 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. Yeah. So there's not going to be an official class. Our hope is that as you're in between classes or as you're taking a break, you come step in and you go play. We want you to come play in the Bare Woods workshop and learn a little bit and just have fun and take something home for you.
I will probably live in your booth. So I want to get one of the Marathon tools. I have a hand rotary tool, but it's a Bosch cordless, little 12 volt, and it works. The problem is the battery burns out like in a split second. So, and I have been debating between the Marathon and the Fordham and what to get, but I'm excited to be able to test that out and get some expert teaching. So that'll be fantastic.
Yeah, you'll have the best in that booth, and we'll talk Fordham and Marathon. I don't have a Fordham as of yet. With carving, I'm still relatively new, and so I feel like that they take up 2 different spaces, but they both have their value. So we'll talk shop while we're there.
Very cool. Look forward to it. What you got going on, Will?
Man, you know what's going on in my shop. Leah, just to key in, about going on a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started developing a hard wax oil finish in my garage. And I found a formula that, let's just say, people love it.
It's awesome.
So since I'm a guest, do I get a sample?
I could probably send you one. And so I started sending to some people, and they're like, you need to sell this. You need to market this. You need to sell this. And so lots of prayer and lots of time and just trying to figure it all out. I'm going to be launching Willie's Wood Finishes here in the next month.
What?
Yeah. So I'm waiting on, I ordered several hundred jars and I got my labels in and several hundred boxes, and I'm just gearing up before I make my website live. I've got a close friend in the maker community that has 500,000 YouTube subscribers who is going to promote it for me. And before he does that, I want to make sure I have stock.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so yeah, it's just a hard wax oil. What I tell people, the story behind it, and if they listen to the podcast, I don't care. Maybe they get to hear Jesus. um, uh, if you've heard of Odie's oil,
Hmm.
so there was a whole thing a couple years ago with the owner of Odie's and commenting on Daniel Dunlop's
Oh, I
post.
was there for that. I was
Okay.
there for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was using Odie's at that point, and I was one of the trash can guys. I'm like, if this is what he thinks about us garage woodworkers, I don't want any part of it. And so
Yeah, there was
that's
like a massive exodus. Yeah.
so that is the inertia behind creating this. I was like, you know what? I can make this and I can make it better, and I'm going to do that. And so, yeah.
We got to talk, man. Let's talk after this.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, getting ready to launch the website. I've got it basically done and ready to start making some finish here pretty soon. I'm just waiting on all the stuff to come in, and then it's going to be every night after kids go to bed, just out in the shop making it and wrapping labels and doing the whole thing. And yeah, small business problems. I mean, I've got a pretty good feeling that God's going to do something with this that I have no idea how to handle, and it's only through Him that I'm going to be able to handle it. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's going to be kind of crazy, but yeah, so we're gearing up for that. When the website is live, it's willieswoodfinishes.com. And right now I just have the Willie's Wood Honey is what we're calling it.
Mhm.
And to say that it smells good is an understatement. I've had people tell me that they want to use it as beard oil. It's all natural, 100% natural, food grade ingredients throughout the whole thing. And I found a recipe that just works so well. So yeah, so that's what my life outside of my full-time job is. I'm gonna be kicking that off. So
That's awesome.
so no woodworking right now. I hope to get into that here soon, but that's not the main priority. So yeah, Willie's
Yeah.
Wood Finishes, Willie's Wood Honey. It's gonna be awesome. I'm pretty excited about it. So, but yeah, that's basically what's going on here. But Tom, what about you? You get to play with that scroll saw some I saw.
Oh, dude. Like, so I had a scroll saw before in my shop in North Carolina. I had a DeWalt, and it was fine. I've been in the sign business for 25 years. And so and like when what really instigated me wanting to get another one is when we did the logo swap challenge. The whole time I was making, I was like, man, if I had my scroll saw, this would be so much easier. And, but when we moved and downsized, I had to sell a bunch of stuff, and that was one of the tools. And but the one thing I hated about it is I always wanted it to be a little bigger. It was, I think it was a 20 or 21 inch. I can't remember the exact size of it. But I mean, it scrolled. It had a variable speed up on top, and it all. But I always wanted, and so that was really the reason I went with the Pegasus. It had no other reason other than, man, that sucker's 30 inches. That,
Huge.
and it's already come in handy. I'm like, oh my God, this is heaven. But
Yeah.
the lift arm mechanism, it's just, and it is quiet. Oh my God. Like I can hardly hear the thing run. It is amazing. So now granted, it did cost more than the DeWalt, but you know, you get what you pay for. But but I started making a sign for my wife, because my wife is so supportive of everything I do. And like, when I buy a tool, she doesn't flinch. She knows I'm going to use it. But so I'm making a sign to go above our bed for her that just says, Chris and Tom. So I'm going to, but I've been doing it early in the morning before she gets up. So I go out there and scroll a bit, and then I go hide the pieces, so she's not seeing any. My daughter, however, I did not know where I did the design on my computer. I left it up on my computer, and my daughter had printed something for college, and she said, "So what you doing with the heart over there, Dad?" And I'm like, I'm making something. It's just like, "What you making?" I was like, "All right, I'm gonna show you, but don't you tell her." She said, "I already know what it is. Yeah, it was on your monitor." And I'm like, "What?" So anyway, I don't know if my wife's seen that or not, but hopefully it's going to be a surprise. But that, and then I've got to finish up my daughter's desk. I was planning on finishing that on Saturday, and then I install auto wraps for the local bus system and for other places, but ended up getting called to do a bus wrap. It took me 4.5 hours to remove the old wrap. It was baked on there. And I spent my entire Saturday at Grand Valley Transit working on a bus wrap. And I was just like, so got home, was tired. Today I went to church and then went snowboarding. So, but yeah, and then I've got 25 signs that I got to get done for an eye clinic that are, they're not woodworking, they're digitally printed signs. But so, yeah, I got a busy week. That's why I was joking when you posted that all your stuff. I'm like, well, what are you going to do after Monday?
Yeah, there's so many things I could have added to that reel, but I was like, well, you better hit the highlights, because if everybody knew all the other things, that reel would have been 3 hours long.
I know. And, I feel like my week is like that every week, it's, and that's why the other day I was posting, it's like, I feel like life is just a continuous list of chores to do, and it doesn't matter what season it is this time of year. Ironically, you had posted a thing about firewood, and it's the same exact thing. It's like, it's been cold here, so we have been burning some firewood. And it's like just a never ending, emptying the ash bucket, getting firewood, splitting kindling, taking out the trash, doing this, doing that. You know? And then I want to find some time to work in my shop.
Yeah. It's great. This morning in church, we're in Genesis, right? And we're talking about creation, all that. And I always go back to that part where it's talking about Adam, and it says, Adam, I'm going to put you in this garden. You're going to work it. And that's that. I love that whole blurb where he talks about, here's a guy, here's a garden. All right, there's your job. And I tell my kids all the time, we were made on this earth to work. The moment that you don't want to work is the moment that you don't want to be in the place that God created for you. And I've got a 7, 6, and 4-year-old that I'm trying to teach to do chores. And I'm like, Lord, thank you so much for giving me that little piece of the Bible so that I can show my kids how to do some chores.
That's exactly right. And, we forget about that. And Satan is all about trying to separate us and make us the exact opposite of what God created us for. But we were created in God's image. And the one thing that drives me crazy when you watch a movie about heaven, it's always white clouds, people in white robes floating around doing nothing. That is not what heaven's going to be like. God is not that boring. Look at what he created, but he worked for 6 days and then took a day off. And that's the other thing. We're going to be talking about rest. God's been on me about that. And so have you ever read the book by Pastor Robert Morrison, Take the Day Off?
But I did a whole thing on Sabbath. I'm talking 15 years ago. And I probably should go and look at it again, because I don't think I'm doing a great job at it.
But it's important. So I posted a little story today about that, because taking time off to rest. And I love, ever since the first time I heard Drew Witt say that statement about those who work with their minds, rest with their hands, and those who work with their hands, rest with their mind, and what meant by that. So it's, if you're a carpenter or a woodworker all week long during the week, then your Sabbath might be sitting and reading a book or watching a movie or doing something else. But if you're a computer programmer or whatever you IT guys do all week long, then getting in the wood shop is actually rest for you because you're resting your mind. And for me, like going out in nature and just hanging out with my daughter on the slopes and being amongst the trees and the fresh air, it just refreshes you. So, yeah. So,
Before we jump off of here, Leah, since you've been to Workbench Con, you have any like newbie pointers or tips to give Tom and I? Because we won tickets to go to Workbench Con through the Maker Challenge, and never been. I've been to conferences, but I've never been to Workbench Con. I know it's kind of special, so
Yeah, I think my first thing is whenever you walk into the room, you're going to see your Instagram feed in flesh and bone, and just know that as you deserve to be in a space in Instagram, you deserve to be in the space with the people that you see. And some people use the word idolize, but I look at it as like, whenever I went to Workbench Con last year and I walked into the lobby and I see all these guys that are what I would consider, high up in their profession, you have to find your feet for a second, and after that whole weekend and rubbing elbows with these people, we are all coworkers and we deserve to be in the room together. And I wish I would have thought that walking into it. There's no way I could have. Somebody could have told me and I still wouldn't have, been able to embody it. But whenever you go there, go be with your coworkers. Go spend the weekend deserving to be in the room that you take up space in Instagram. You get to take up that space too, and you deserve to be there. That's probably my first thing, is know that you deserve it. The second thing is, oh man, listen for sure, but don't hesitate to ask and go up to anybody. Ask any question that you have. Don't take a breath and think that anybody's going to think anything of it. The whole point of that weekend is for us to share in real time all the things that we have to go through red tape to share here, And the Kristen, who runs Workbench Con, who puts on the event, that is the biggest heart that she has, is to give us space to be able to share as much as possible within 2 days time. And so that would be my second thing. Third, get to know the people behind the brands. A lot of people think that folks that go to Workbench Con are brand partnership thirsty. And I think that that's a mischaracterization of what a lot of us are going to actually do. When I went to Workbench Con, I'd already had a small relationship with Surf Prep, but whenever I met the people behind it, I fell in love with the people. Now the brand and the product is amazing to me. I already knew that I loved it, but when I met them and we laughed and we took up time together, that was where magic started to happen. Same thing with Winfinity, meeting Stone, and I could rattle off a bunch of names. But if you get a chance, go meet every person behind the brand that you can. Get to know them. Get to know who you're supporting when you use their product, and that's going to make a significant shift in what you keep in your shop and why you use it. There's a lot of products that do a similar job. Now I know the ones that I want to push my money into because of the people behind it. So, and then lastly, drink so much water. Know that you're going to be in a 3-day coma once you get home, and bring stickers. The end.
I'm glad you just said stickers. So
you gotta order
for
them.
all the listeners, Faith Talk Wood stickers will be in tomorrow or Tuesday. So I've got stickers for the podcast coming in, as well as T-shirts and so merch there, and so my stickers as well. But awesome. So we will definitely hook
Actually,
you up.
the other tab on my internet browser is not stickers or business card kind of things for the Willie's Wood Honey to give out with a QR code for people can find the website. So that's what I've been
There's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot more hacks. After we're done with this, I can tell you a few different things, but I'm going to tell you where I leveled up this year, and I haven't told anybody this. This is exclusive information. I decided that stickers are great, but I added on temporary tattoos of my logo to this year's things that I brought.
That's hilarious.
Fair party.
That is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So
Awesome.
tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. I am Parker Place Woodwork on Instagram and Facebook, sometimes on TikTok when I'm feeling like I'm more in my 20s than in my 40s. I will be pushing into YouTube this year, coming soon. I will make sure to plug that. And then you'll catch me behind Bearwood's Supply Company and their socials.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Well, it's getting late here, and I'm sure we got a little after talk to talk about some stuff. And but man, it's been awesome hearing your testimony and hearing how God has used some of the projects and your shop and your heart in the ministry and where you feel like this is going. And excited to meet you at Workbench Con and so many other people. It's going to be kind of, you can be inundated by the social interaction, right? But I'm a social person, so this is right up my alley. So definitely looking forward to it. But well, until next week, I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.